to Stanford School of Business professor Dave Dodson on this. Dave, where do you think this goes? They will have a friendlier crowd in Washington that pretty much to a branch is okay with this idea of a $15 wage.
Well, look, Neil, it could not come at a worst possible time. You know, we have to be mindful of what the stimulus bill is supposed to do. And it's supposed to help certain people who've been affected get back to work. And most importantly, certain companies that have been deeply affected reopening. And by slamming $15 an hour minimum wage, this sort of macro policy on an emergency time, couldn't happen at a worst possible time. Now, look, you could get any guest you want to come on the show and some report about minimum wage laws. You just have to use common sense and think about it from the standpoint of a business owner. If you're a restaurant owner, 1/3 of your cost is labor, and you're deciding whether to open, how many hours to have, how many people that I want to have on the staff, whether I'm going to do overtime, and now all of a sudden my labor costs are up 25%, you cannot tell me that that's not going to affect how many people you bring back. Secondly, and this actually may be the real critical issue, is that restaurant owners, and by the way, this affects 50% of the people affected are in the restaurant business. Restaurant owners have had a horrendous 9 months and a really bad December, and many of them are wondering whether they're going to open at all. And part of the calculus here is that they've got a whole bunch of back rent that they owe, they have debt that they have, and they have bills that they have to pay. And now we're saying, oh, by the way, when you are most fragile, we're going to kick you in the teeth and raise your labor costs. What's going to happen is they're just going to say, you know what, I'm just not going to open.
And if you think about it, Professor, there already is a $15 wage or close to it in a lot of cities. So it's different strokes for different folks in markets and all that demand it. A lot of companies have found that unless they were paying that much, they were just going to be beaten out by someone else who was. So that's fine. But I mean, if you're in a rural area or a state where these costs are not nearly as high, there ought to be some flexibility to it, right?
Neil, that's exactly right. I mean, this really is to a large extent a rural versus urban issue, right? Because 29 states and the District of Columbia already have minimum wage laws that are higher than the federal minimum wage law. But if you look at where those are located, it's really a blue state, red state issue where blue states, who are largely not going to be affected by this, are imposing minimum wage on states that don't have one now and can't afford it because it doesn't cost the same to live in Greenwich, Connecticut as it costs to live in Biloxi, Mississippi. And this kind of notion of macro nanny state economics, where we're going to decide what the wage should be across the whole United States without thinking about those regional differences, is insane.
All right, Professor Dave Dodson, strongly spoken, my friend. Thank you very, very much for the Stanford School of Business. Dave Dodson.